if being thrown out of the hall isn't enough, we'll probably be exiled, and birched before we go, just to drop salt in our tea. Burn me. If we're wrong, we could all be stilled. Siain shuddered. They would escape that last if their suspicions proved right. No, not suspicions, certainties. They had to be right. But even if they were, Yukiri was correct about the rest. Tower law seldom allowed for necessity, or any supposed higher good. If they were right, though, the price was worth paying. Please, the lights send they were right. "Are you blind and deaf?" Pevara snapped, shaking the oath rod at Yukiri. She refused to re-swear the oath against speaking an untrue word, and it had to be more than stupid green Aja pride after we'd all done as much already. When I shielded her, she tried to stab me. Does that shout innocence? Does it? For all she knew, we just meant to talk at her until our tongues dried up. What reason would she have to expect more? "Thank you both," Saren put in dryly, "for stating the obvious. It's too late to go back, Yukiri, so we might as well go forward. And if I were you, Pevara, I wouldn't be shouting at one of the 4 women in the whole tower I knew I could trust." Yukiri flushed and shifted her shawl, and Pevara looked a trifle abashed. A trifle. They might all be sitters, but Saren had most definitely taken charge. Siain was unsure how she felt about that. A few hours ago she and Pevara had been 2 old friends, alone on a dangerous quest, equals reaching decisions together. Now they had allies. She should be grateful for more companions. They were not in the hall, though, and they could not claim sitters' rights on this. Tower hierarchies had taken over, all the subtle and not-so-subtle distinctions as to who stood where with respect to whom. In truth, Saren had been both novice and accepted twice as long as most of them, but 40 years as a sitter, longer than anyone else in the hall, counted for a great deal. Siain would be lucky if Saren asked her opinion, much less her advice, before deciding anything at all. Foolish, yet the knowledge pricked like a thorn in her foot. "The Trollocs are dragging her toward the kettle," Doacine said suddenly, her voice grating. A thin keening escaped through Talin's clenched teeth. She shook so hard she seemed to vibrate. I do not know if I can flaming make myself—" "Bring her awake," Saren commanded, without so much as glancing at anyone else to see what they thought. "Stop sulking, Yukiri, and be ready." The grey gave her a proud, furious stare, but when Doacine let her weaves fade and Talin's blue eyes fluttered open, the glow of Saidar surrounded Yukiri, and she shielded the woman lying on the chair without uttering a word. Saren was in charge, and everyone knew it, and that was that. A very sharp thorn. A shield hardly seemed necessary. Her face a mask of terror, Talin trembled and panted as though she had run 10 miles at top speed. She still sank into the soft surface, but without Doacine channeling, it no longer formed itself to her. Talin stared at the ceiling with bulging eyes, then squeezed them shut, but they popped right open again. Whatever memories lay behind her eyelids were nothing she wanted to face. Covering the 2 strides to the chair, Pevara thrust the oath rod at the distraught woman. "Forswear all oaths that bind you and retake the 3 oaths, Talin," she said harshly. Talin recoiled from the rod as from a poisonous serpent, then jerked the other way as Saren bent over her. "Next time, Talin, it's the cookpot for you. Or the Myrddraal's tender attentions." Saren's face was implacable, but her tone made it seem soft by comparison. "No waking up before. And if that doesn't do, there'll be another time and another, as many as it takes if we must stay down here until summer." Doacine opened her mouth in protest before giving over with a grimace. Only she among them knew how to operate the chair, but in this group she stood as low as Siain. Talin continued to stare up at Saren. Tears filled her big eyes, and she began to weep, great shuddering, hopeless sobs. Blindly she reached out, groping until Pevara stuck the oath rod into her hand. Embracing the source, Pevara channeled a thread of spirit to the rod. Talin gripped the wrist-thick rod so hard that her knuckles turned white, yet she just lay there sobbing. Saren straightened. "I fear it's time to put her back to sleep, Doacine." Talene's tears